Yes, welcome back. We are still dealing with literature in English, specifically poetry, and it's non-African poetry with Wilfrid Gibson's The Stone, written against the background of an elegiac monody. In other words, the poem is an elegy. What's an elegy? An elegy is a poem of lamentation written to mourn the demise or the death of a loved one. By structure, the poem is made up of 11 stanzas and 97 lines. It's written because of the demise of the lover or the speaker, all right? And the speaker in question.
No one if I'm done, I'll bring it.
Alright, welcome back. We are still dealing with poetry. Now it's non-African poetry written by Wilfrid Gibson, and this time it's The Stone, which is an elegiac monody. Elegy is actually a poem of lamentation written to mourn the demise or death of a loved one. This time around, the lover in this poem, a woman, is mourning the demise of her lover, okay, who actually died because of a stone that falls on him in a quarry. So because of that, she has been in a melancholic stream or melancholic mood, okay. And then after the death of the lover, she actually is in a very bad mood, and then the narrator goes to her house to break the news to her about the demise of her lover. But unknown to the narrator, before he eventually got there, according to him, some fools had actually gone to report the woman previously. Of course, it's no longer news to the woman because somebody has already told her before about the death of the lover. Okay, and then the woman turns to the narrator and reveals that, please, can you cut a stone for him? Alright, what does that mean? Can you carve a stone in the name of my dead husband or lover? And then the poet in question actually agrees, that's the narrator, and he continues to carve a stone. Each time he's carving the stone, the woman is always watching, alright? And then the narrator is always uncomfortable as he actually witnesses the uncomfortable nature of the woman mourning the demise of her lover. So along the line, having carved the stone, the woman breathes the name of her lover inside the stone, and then she turns to walk away. And then out of pity, the narrator himself carves a stone in the name of the lady in question, okay, who is actually mourning the demise of her lover. Okay, so the stone, by way of the thematic concern, is an elegy on the death of the lover of a particular lady who dies because of a stone that falls on him in a particular quarry. And then the appeal she has actually given to the narrator for him to carve a stone in the name of the lover, of which is granted, and by the end of the day, she breathes the name of the lover in the carved stone representing the lover. And then again, to crown it all, the poet himself carves a stone in the name of the lady in question, thereby presenting the intensity of the melancholic strain recorded in the poem. So in terms of the structure, as earlier stated, it has 97 lines and of course 11 stanzas. Okay, yeah. And then look at the main points therein, that the death of the lover, of course, we made mention of that earlier. The narrator visits to break the news. Of course, before the narrator got there, somebody already had given the information to the lover that, see, or the lady in question that, see, your lover is already there with a stone that falls on him at a particular quarry. So on the fourth day, we are told that she appealed for a stone to be carved in honor of her lover, and then her appeal, her request was granted anyway. And then she's always watching as the stone is being carved in honor of her late lover. Although her presence does not make the narrator comfortable, always presenting an air of sympathy or pity, and it disturbs the narrator who is actually carving the stone to mourn the demise of the lover. Nevertheless, he has no choice than to continue. So the poet also carves, as I said earlier, a stone in her name, all right, to show that he feels, concerned about the, pathetic and harrowing condition witnessed by the lover in question. Yes, in our next class, we are going to be looking at the themes and, of course, the literary devices embedded in the poem. All right, welcome back. This time we are looking at the themes of The Stone by Wilfrid Gibson. All right, and Wilfrid Gibson's poem, as we earlier discussed in our previous video, is actually an elegy. What's an elegy? A poem of lamentation. Now, below are the themes that are used or found in the poem. We have a theme of sorrow. Obviously, the speaker in the poem is not happy with the fact that the lover, the lady, has been killed with, a stone that has fallen on him at a particular quarry, unidentified quarry. Now, painful death. The death is painful because it is a stone that has actually fallen on the man in question. And then we have a theme of loss. It is a great loss for the lady in question because her partner is gone to the world beyond. The inevitability of death. Death is inevitable. But how it comes matters a lot. How it has actually visited the lover of the lady is what is most painful, alright? Because he was brutally killed by the stone that has fallen on him from a particular quarry. Now let's look at the literary devices deployed in the poem, the mood. Now the emotional state of the author as he writes, or the poet as he writes this poem, is one of sadness throughout because it concerns itself with the death or demise of someone. Now the tone or the attitude that shows the mood is grief, lamentation, okay? There is an attitude of grief, lamentation, and sorrow in the poem that makes us identify the mood of sadness or melancholy. Then we talk about metaphor. What does a metaphor do? Chiefly, a metaphor is that figure of speech that replaces one thing with another, right? Cutting a stone. Will you cut a stone for me? It's not the normal story we are talking about. The stone represents the memory of the dead lover. It is through the stone that she will forever remember the, the lover who has actually passed away in a very tragic sense. Now, personification, together I am death. Alright, how can you say you and death? Okay, as though death were human that you are comparing yourself with. Okay, that's personification. Now let's look at repetition. And will you cut the stone for me? It's actually repeated many times in the poem for the purpose of emphasis. Okay, yes, will you cut a stone for me? It's actually, directed at the narrator for him to carve a stone in memory of the death of her lover. Now let's look at imagery. The imagery predominantly used in the poem is visual. What is visual imagery? That which actually creates mental picture in the mind of the readers. That's that for The Stone by Wilfrid Gibson. So in our next poem, we're going to be looking at The Priest Known Still by Wilfrid Wilson Gibson.